et cetera. And I'm wondering if you can describe, if someone asked you, when did the Emergencies Act come into play as a possibility? How would you answer that?
Oh, as an idea, it would have been from the very beginning in the back of our minds. As you see a situation that is an emergency, is out of control, has a potential for real impact on citizens, potential for violence, real concerns about what's going on, not just in Ottawa, but right across the country. At the Coutts blockade that started up on the same first weekend that the Ottawa occupation did. These are the things that you say, okay, as we look at a whole range of potential outcomes in this, there might be a moment where we have to invoke the Emergencies Act. It wasn't seriously thought of because I will say certainly in my thinking right now, it was a fairly binary reflection. It was, oh, we might have to invoke the Emergencies Act. There was no reflection of what we would have to invoke the Emergencies Act to do. It was just understanding that if this situation continues and is unable to get under control by anything else, the federal government might have to give the provinces more powers, give police more powers, do something to put an end to this. So whenever we said, yeah, we're looking at all options, it would have been in the back of our minds, particularly because I think we're probably the first government that had ever actually leaned in carefully to maybe using the Emergencies Act as we did in the beginning of the pandemic. We dusted it off and had presentations at Cabinet around what the Emergencies Act was and how it was an update from the previous legislation that had existed before and how it was charter compliant. And because post 1982, a lot of things needed to change for the better in our country with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So we got a crash course in the Emergencies Act and the consultations required and all the various steps of it 2 years before around the pandemic. As I had said during the consultations at that time with the premiers, I didn't think we needed to use it. I didn't think it was appropriate for us to declare a public welfare emergency. I believe the section is within the Emergencies Act that we would have invoked around the pandemic. But there were a lot of people calling for us to do it because it was obviously a national emergency, this pandemic, particularly in the early days of spring 2020. So we were somewhat versed in this legislation that had never been used. Seeing this particular public order situation, it was a reflection in the back of our minds, or my mind anyway, I can't speak for everyone, that maybe it would end up at this. But for the same reason we were loath to call an IRG too soon in the process, we knew that it wasn't ours to solve at this point, that there were still lots of things that the police of jurisdiction and various orders could and should be, orders of government could and should be doing to put an end to this. So it wasn't until, as you say, the IRG of February 10th, Thursday, that we said, okay, track one, what more can we do to empower police and public safety officials to put an end to these illegal occupations? What more resources can we spend with existing authorities? And track two was, what could we do that we would have to create new authorities for, whether it was through regulation, whether it was through passing emergency measures through the House, or whether it was using something like the Emergency Measures Act. And the key for me in that conversation was it was a shift from that sort of binary frame of no Emergencies Act or Emergencies Act. Because if you think about it, the Emergencies Act itself doesn't do anything except declare an emergency. It's that it enables government to bring in special temporary measures to deal with the situation. So the useful conversations around the Emergencies Act started on February 10th when I asked the question, okay, what are the extra tools that we would need to bring in, either through legislation or through regulation or in various ways, or through the Emergencies Act, that we don't actually have now? Or what would we do with the Emergencies Act if we brought it in that we can't otherwise do? And that reflection on, well, what would be the tools, actually clarified and got the work going. Perfect example was we'd heard consistently throughout that commercial tow truck drivers were not willing to come in and remove trucks. Well, the Emergencies Act perhaps could compel tow truck drivers to come and actually fulfill their contracts that are signed with cities to keep the streets clear of illegally parked cars. So that reflection was really the one that started then. And the tasking that I gave on that Thursday, that we would check in again on the Saturday at the next IRG, was, okay, come up with those tools that we could get at that would solve this. And then we'll look at, well, do we need the Emergencies Act to bring in these tools, or can we do it through another way, or can we convince a province to do it, or are there other ways of doing it? But let's figure out what are the things that would allow us to get this situation, which was out of control, back under control.